This video is sponsored by Squarespace. 12 of 22 races done, summer break, mid-season report time. Let's reflect on the first 12 races of this season and rank all the drivers from best to worst. We did this last year, we're doing it again. I did put a poll out to ask you lot to rank every driver from 1 to 10. I've then taken the average score of each driver and I'm going from P20 to P1. My opinion, recency bias, probably. General bias, probably. Honourable mention to Nick De Vries, who would almost certainly be bottom of this list, and he did lose his seat. It happens when you're in the Red Bull family, I guess. But starting with P20 in this list, it has to be Logan Sargeant, I'm afraid. The only driver to get whitewashed, 12-0 in qualifying. He's a rookie, sure, but the rookie levels we've seen over recent years, whether it's Charles Leclerc, whether it's Max Verstappen, whether it's Oscar Piastri, to be decimated by your teammate in the way that he is being decimated by Alex, not to the extent of Latifi, for sure. There's been these odd moments where he's close. He really should have got the quali dub over Alex in Saudi Arabia, but it wasn't to be. Okay, it's the next day. I was planning on filming my reaction to your ratings directly after recording last night, but it was far too late. I was far too tired. As was Minton, who is here. He hasn't been in a video for a while. Hello, mate. 2,392 of you voted on the poll before I closed it because I had to do the graphics and the graphics take ages. That's a good enough sample size. I'm happy with that, but sorry if you missed the poll. Right, back there you go, mate. They've just got to see what terrible opinions you have. What's wrong with you? We've already agreed, P20, you've put Kevin Magnussen with an average score of 3.75 out of 10. Ouch, Kev. You've probably given a bit more concession to Sargeant's rookiness than I have, so fair enough. P19, I've gone with Kevin Magnussen. Kevin's been very disappointing this year, I've got to be honest, right? He did a bit of a job on Mick Schumacher last year, but I would say Nico is doing an equivalent job on him this year. It's 9-3 in qualifying to the Hulk. Hulkenberg's very quick over a lap, but Magnussen's a very experienced driver now. He's been at that Haas team for a very long time, obviously with a bit of a break. Hulkenberg's first year in that seat, and over a lap, he's comfortably out qualifying him. And for the Haas, like, a good qualifying position is the only way they're getting points because they've got zero race pace, especially maybe in a sprint where Hulkenberg's done the business when it's mattered. He's been the one delivering most of those points. Got to step up, Kev. I expect more from you. P19, you've put Sargeant, 3.93 average score. Again, him and K-Mag interchangeable. I get it. P18, I've gone with Joe. It's been a difficult season at Alfa Romeo. For sure, they've been pretty awful, Romeo. And when they did have that opportunity in Hungary, then a car issue for Joe from P5, which was a fantastic qualifying performance, don't get me wrong. But clearly, that car had pace. Bottas was P7. So I think Bottas has done the better job of the two this year. So I'm putting Joe behind Valtteri, not by much, but all in all, the highs, I can't think of any highs really. It's been mainly kind of low mediums, and there's more highs from other drivers around the grid. So unfortunately, as much as I love him, Joe P18. P18, you guys have put Lance Stroll. I was thinking after this, was that a bit generous to Lance? His P4 in Australia and his P4 in the Austria sprint race are the only real peaks there. But you've given him a 4.04 rating, almost behind Sargeant, which is a lot. Okay, one final reminder, the live show is coming on Friday, this coming Friday, 4 days time from this video's release. You can still buy tickets on tommocluskey.co.uk, my website, which is hosted, of course, on Squarespace. I've used Squarespace for years, long predating this YouTube channel and me doing ad reads for Squarespace. I love the product and I'm more than happy to promote it to you lot. Beautiful drag and drop templates, 24/7 customer support. It's honestly a breeze to put together your own online home. I did mine all by myself. It's free of charge to try it out only when you want to put your finished website live to the world. You have to pay anything, and when that time inevitably, because of course it will come around. Go to squarespace.com/TommoF1 to get 10% off your very first website or domain. P17, Bottas for me, not much more to say. Him and Joe have had very similar seasons. Valtteri has had the slight advantage, I feel like, on pace. However, the proximity of the two, I'm disappointed that Bottas hasn't done more of a job on Joe. Given his pedigree, all his years at Mercedes, how long he's been in the sport, thinking from Audi's point of view, coming into that team and gradually taking it over, am I confident in Joe? Maybe not, but am I confident in Bottas to lead that team? I'm not. P17, you've put Valtteri Bottas a 4.5 out of 10, which means you've put him behind Joe, which, look, to me, again, I think Bottas is just edged out Joe this year. But fair enough, you take into account the experience of Valtteri, and it has been quite disappointing. P16, I've put Daniel Ricciardo. He's only had 2 races. I get this is very, very difficult to judge. I couldn't in good faith put him any higher than this. He did a fantastic job in Hungary, given how little exposure he'd had to that AlphaTauri car to do what he did in Hungary. Fantastic. Even the sprint at Belgium, very good job. In the race, not so much. He's had 2 races. It's super early doors for Dan. I'm putting him here, but we'll see. I'm confident. As much as Yuki had the better weekend this weekend, I think Daniel will have the legs on Yuki over the course of the season. That'll be very interesting to see. His height of Hungary has already been higher than Bottas, Joe, Magnussen and Sargent, in my opinion. So he's here. P16. I thought I'd put Checo harsh, but you put Checo P16. Damn. 4.81 out of 10. Now, again, I think it's important to not get too caught up in recency bias. It's hard, it's difficult, of course it is, right? But those first 4 of 5 races, he was P1, P2, clear of the field by loads. And I have to take that into account. Yes, it's been stinky as of recent, but he has had those peaks. So that's why I put him higher than you guys. P15, I've gone with Lance Stroll. He's had his moments of bad luck, no doubt, but for Fernando to be where he is and Lance to be where he is, the discrepancy after, this is his 7th, 8th year in the sport as well, so the excuses start to dry up a little bit. Yes, he's still young, but I feel like Lance is pretty close to his ceiling. And look, to be beaten by Fernando Alonso, it's happened to many a driver in the past, it will happen to many a driver in the future. I can't hold that against Lance, but Fernando is showing the potential of that package, particularly earlier on in the season where they had to capitalise on McLaren struggling, Mercedes, Ferrari, all them struggling. Now they've caught up. It leaves Lance, P5, P9 in Spa. It leaves Lance out the question because he didn't capitalise enough when the opportunities were presenting themselves earlier on in the year. P15, you've put Zhou Guan Yu with 5.42 out of 10 enquiries. That's almost 1 entire point higher than Bottas. I love Zhou, but I really disagree. I don't think Zhou's been that much. Again, I know he's a 2nd year, right? It's a bit different. He's not a rookie anymore. He's had time in that car and he is very close to Valtteri, but I wouldn't say he's a whole point better. P14, the first one which I'm sure will be contentious to an extent. I've gone with Checo. 4 of the first 5 races at the start of the season, he finished more than 20 seconds clear of the next non-Red Bull car, okay? Checo has it in his locker to dominate. That makes his issues in qualifying, particularly Monaco and Austria, and not making Q3 5 qualifying sessions in a row, that makes them even more worse because he's shown he's got the potential, he's got the pace to be clear of the rest yet. My goodness, man. Monaco crashing in Q1, Austria track extending when you had about 4 tenths in hand. That's unacceptable. The spotlights are brighter when you're at the top, and unfortunately Max is doing it again. He did it to Gasly, he did it to Albon, and he's doing it to Checo. And look, yes, Checo is still P2 in the championship, but at the end of the day, you look at that percentage gap between Max and Checo, and if that's anywhere else on the grid, then there's rightfully questions about the future of their time at that team. And with Checo, he's still holding on to P2, but man, the consistency seriously needs to improve. Some of these mistakes have been gopping. I know this feeling from 2020 with Albon letting himself down time and time again against Max, and it's the same case here. P14, you've put Daniel Ricciardo 5.7 out of 10. Look, it's very difficult to rate Daniel, isn't it? He has had a very strong opening weekend, anyone, not so much in Belgium. Is what it is. P13, I've gone with Pierre Gasly. Given it's the first year at that Alpine team, I'm giving him a bit of concession there. But all in all, it's not been great. P7 at Monaco, best result for him. But all in all, I think Ocon has had the measure of him so far. I'm interested to see how that gap changes relative. It's been super even in qualifying, 6-6, which is impressive from Pierre. But in the races where it matters, he's just not quite had that edge of Esteban. This isn't a bad rating by any stretch. I don't think he's had a bad season, but I want to see more from Pierre. I think he's got more in his locker for sure. P13, our second agreement. We've both put Pierre Gasly. You've given him a 5.84 out of 10, so just ahead of Ricciardo. It's been all right from Pierre. P12, I've gone Nico Hülkenberg. Fantastic job in qualifying. Many a time, again, doing a great job on Kevin Magnussen. You could argue maybe I should put Nico higher. I was debating around this. These kind of mid-table drivers are super close in my mind. Picked up that P7 in Australia, which was huge. P6 in the Austria sprint race as well. Did the job when the opportunity presented itself. However, when you're at the back, it's really hard to showcase your ability, the top drivers are always going to be considered more highly. You could have the greatest race in the world in a Haas and finish P12 and no one's really going to bat an eyelid. P12, big discrepancy here. I put Hulkenberg, you've put Sainz, 6.28 out of 10. I think that's harsh in my opinion. I think you're overlooking his consistency for me. Maybe it's not those box office super special performances that Charles putting in, but I think Carlos is doing a good job. P11, I'm saying Esteban Ocon. Again, I think he slightly outperformed Pierre Gasly. I think Monaco was a fantastic result. I mean, yes, Max deserved all the plaudits for that incredible qualifying lap, but Ocon was only 2/10 behind him in an Alpine. It's not been an incredible season, but that Alpine isn't an incredible car. So I think Ocon has done enough to showcase yet. He is ahead of Pierre somewhat, but again, not by much, and it's Pierre's first season in that team. So Esteban needs to maintain this kind of advantage if he wants to consolidate his position as more of a number one in that team. P11, you've put George Russell, 6.31 out of 10, just fractionally ahead of Carlos Sainz. Yeah. Okay, P10, bang in the middle. I have gone with George Russell. Relative to the standards he's set in his F1 career so far, I think this has been his weakest period. Difficult to really measure his Williams tenure. Obviously got his P3 in Spain, but Lewis has definitely had the measure on him. You could argue last year, I would still say Lewis had the measure on him last year but I think the gap's been pretty substantial. George has had some really difficult weekends. Now, of course, that Mercedes is not the finished article by any stretch. You drive what's underneath you, and Lewis is doing a better job of that at the moment. George has started to establish this little bit of a reputation of being a bit crashy, a bit squeezy, which isn't ideal, and that does somewhat reflect in me putting in P10, which again isn't a bad rating by any stretch. He's had some high highs, but the lows are frequent enough for me to dock him some points. P10, you put Esteban Ocon, 6.41 out of 10, which I put Ocon P11. Our P10 and 11s with Ocon and Russell are interchangeable pretty much. There's not much in it, is there? P9, I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda. So 3 P11s and 3 P10s in that AlphaTauri, which I think Daniel Ricciardo is proven isn't a terrible car because Nick de Vries just wasn't doing a great job in it. 6 times he's either just in the points or just outside of the points. Overall been very, very consistent. He had a weak weekend in Hungary for sure, and Ricciardo came in and it wasn't a good look. Trying to push away the recency bias as much as I can. For me, Yuki P9 he's been very good this season. He needs to keep this up, if not elevate the level even more to give himself a shot at that Red Bull, because Ricciardo coming in is definitely a big new benchmark for him. P9, you guys have put Nico Hulkenberg, 6.73 out of 10. I don't know, maybe I have underrated Hulkenberg. The quality performances have been strong, but that car, I think that car is proven and has proven over this and last year that qualifying pace isn't a massive issue. It is keeping hold of the tyres in the race, and that's hitting both of them. So, you know what, yeah, first year at the team, I don't hate this one. P8, I've gone Carlos Sainz. Now, Carlos has been consistent this year, I think, mostly. He's only been outside the points twice all season. Obviously had damage at Belgium, which very much inhibited his push. It's really difficult with the Ferrari lads because I do think Charles has the edge on Carlos, and I think that's more the reason. But however, I would say that Carlos is more likely to pull rank on Ferrari, enforce the strategy that he wants, and I think that's an important and valuable component of Carlos. He knows what he wants and he's prepared to push for it, and he's not been a mile off Charles. But for me, P8 in this. P8, you guys have put Charles Leclerc, 6.87 out of 10. Don't fundamentally disagree because I put him P7. Just ahead of Carlos for me. Again, he does have that slight pace. More often than not, trust Charles to just eke out that extra 10th, maybe 2/10, but he's got that 10th on Carlos, that just that little bit of star quality difference that Charles Leclerc brings. However, he has had his stinky moments, and again, he needs to take notes down from Carlos. That Ferrari team clearly isn't in a place to command authority over their drivers, and the talent that Charles Leclerc has, he needs to put his foot down. For him to get to where he needs to be in that team, it does require a scruff of the neck approach. At times, I think him and Carlos could be onto a really good thing, and they're holding up most of their end of the bargain. Unfortunately, the team are letting him down. Your P7 is Yuki Tsunoda, 6.93 out of 10. Has he had a worse season, better season than Leclerc? You think so? I think not. Ooh, maybe. you can see from your scores, what, P7 6.93, P12 6.28. So there's a big range of positions for a very small range of rating from you lot. P6 on my list, I've gone with Alex Albon. Okay, whoa. Okay, maybe I'm biased. I don't know, right? I'm calling it as I see it. I think Alex has had a phenomenal season. I mean, Spa this weekend really did expose how slow he was through Sector 2, just how little downforce that Williams has. Yes, it makes up for it in a straight line, but damn, most tracks are going to punish a lack of downforce, yet he's able to get some really top performances out. 3 times in the points, twice P11, running really well in Australia before he dropped it by himself, which, you know, he has to get dot points for that because that could have been a great result for him. Look, since he's been at that Williams team, he's had Latifi as a teammate. Now he's got a rookie Logan Sargent as a teammate. So it's very hard to know that, you know, in the hands of a top driver, and a known top driver like a, you know, Hamilton, Alonso, Verstappen, whatever, what that Williams could do. But I feel pretty confident that Alex is getting pretty damn close to the ceiling of that car. Leading that team forward, I've been so impressed with Alex. I'm so chuffed and I'm so proud of him, to be fair, because like his career was looking mudded after his Red Bull stint, and he's come back to Williams, a great team with great legacy, made himself such a valuable asset to that team. I'm super excited and I hope that he can move forward with Williams. P6 and a big jump up here, but a name I was quite surprised to see in P6. You've put Lewis Hamilton 7.87 out of 10. This is too low. I really think this is too low. Points every race in a car that clearly still needs a lot of work and has a lot of big changes coming onto it. I think Lewis has achieved almost maximum from most weekends. P5, I've gone Oscar Piastri. Now, granted, do I think he's had a stronger season as driver A, driver B than, say, Alex and Charles? Probably not, but given he's a rookie, given the struggles of that McLaren early doors and how close he was to Lando then and how close he is still to Lando now, Oscar Piastri, man, take a bow. Like, the Prema engineers were right about you. He is as promising as Charles Leclerc, okay? This kid clearly has it. He's been able to step up and compete at the top in these last few races like a duck to water. The way he carries himself as well is very calm, composed, mature, efficient. I've got no doubt in my mind if you give him top tier machinery, he would compete already. And I'm saying that after 12 races into his F1 career. He hasn't had the highs of Lando for sure, and he was very unlucky to miss out on that podium at Silverstone. So I'm not going to put him any higher than this, but bravo. P5, you've put Oscar Piastri 8.07 out of 10, same as me. I mean, fair play, it's helped obviously this late season improvement in McLaren to give him the chance to shine, you know? We're on par here. P4, I've debated this one back and forth, and actually what I've got listed down here on my phone, I've changed my mind. P4, I'm going with Lando Norris. 2 P2s in a row, Britain and Hungary, difficult start to the season in a very tricky car, has had that gap to Piastri, has done very little wrong. I think Lando's had another fantastic season so far. Hopefully McLaren can keep these upgrades going and keep that car competitive, because look, any of the naysayers now about, oh, Lando's overrated, that has to stop. This kid's not overrated. This kid is the real deal, man. Even in Belgium, you saw how little straight line speed that McLaren had, yet he was still able to, with the help of strategy for sure, but come back to a P7 finish. Phenomenal. To jump Max at the start at Silverstone, and I mean, there's not much more he could have done in that situation, really, let's be honest. P4, you've put Alex Albon. Who's the biased one now? 8.15 out of 10. Look, he's had a very good season as Alex. He has had his moments. Again, Australia was a big shame, but I'm so excited for Monza. More of the same quality, Alex, and I'm glad you're seeing it as well. So then P3 on my list, I've gone with Lewis. For me, he just about squeezes out Lando Norris for P3. Now, yes, Lewis has had a more competitive car for more of this season, granted. P2 in Australia, P2 in Spain, P3 Canada, P3 Silverstone, a couple of P4s in the last 2 races. You know, Lewis has been consistent, and you look at where George's and where George's struggles have been in a car that clearly still isn't particularly suited to either of them. I think Lewis is he's putting on some serious performances as of recent. Like, he's doing bits in that car. From the quality of execution that I've seen and the consistency of execution I've seen, he's every bit as good as he was when he was in a top car dominating. He just needs that package to be there. I think he needs Mercedes just as much as they need him. I think next year, we'll be in for a bit of a fight next year, as long as Mercedes hold up their end of the bargain, because Lewis certainly is. P3, you've put Lando Norris, 8.17 out of 10, only just ahead of Alex. Only just, 0.02 ahead of Alex, crazy. Alex has been great, Norris has been better for me. He's showcased top levels, once again has Lando. This kid's serious. P2 for me, it's Fernando Alonso. You look at that start of the season, all those podiums. I mean, yes, as of late, that car hasn't quite been at it. They bought upgrades in Montreal. They thought they were onto a good thing. Now they've struggled to understand it. It's affected the balance of the car a little bit. They're starting to get it back now. But Fernando, you've just been able to rely on him so consistently to deliver the points. And you look at the gap to Stroll. And this one isn't going to be popular, but you look at that gap Stroll relative to Vettel last year. And now you look at the gap Fernando relative to Stroll. And this is by no means to try and disrespect Vettel. It's almost to show that Stroll is a good driver. Fernando Alonso is just doing him in. And he's 42 this year. Well, he's just turned 42, sorry. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When he came back into the sport, I was like, this guy, he can't possibly be anywhere near the level he used to be. And I was so wrong. Now Aston Martin need to carry on this momentum and give him a championship fight. Imagine Lewis, Fernando, Max, maybe Lando, maybe Charles. If they all had Mike, imagine that as a five-way fight. That would be unreal. Please, teams, catch up with Red Bull. Because we've got 4 of them all in the same kind of vicinity now. It's just Max at the front being too good. P2, Fernando Alonso, you've given him an 8.36 out of 10. Can't argue with that. I'll put him P2. Completely fair. I think he's edged out Lando. He hasn't been faultless, but P2 is deserving of that. You think he's been very clear of Lewis. I think he's been just clear of Lewis. Not much in it. Which means P1, of course it's Max Verstappen. Of course, he is writing history. This period of domination by Max Verstappen, what he's doing in this car against an absolute stacked field, against a top quality teammate as well in Sergio Perez. He's still so young. He's still got so much potential to carry on for as long as he wants to. At the end of the day, Max Verstappen will, without shadow of doubt, go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. There's no question. He already is. 8 wins on the bounce now, which if he wins at Zandvoort, that makes him 9, which would match Sebastian Vettel's 9 wins in a row that he got in 2013. And then in Monza, Max could make it 10. Now, I would say Monza is one of those tracks. It's a very unique circuit. Maybe Alex will win. He's in a Williams. It's a bit of a rocket ship. Obviously, Max would still be favourite for Monza. That could be a bit tricky, but either way, like, look, Max could easily win the next 2 races, of course. He could easily make it 10. Still 10 more races this year. Why not make it 18 in a row, Max? I mean, you wouldn't put it past him. You've put Max Verstappen 9.82 out of 10. Wow. That is very close to the perfect 10. If I had to give him a rating out of 10, just myself, I'd have to give him a 10, really. Like, what's he done wrong? In terms of the realistic boundaries that the world sets upon you, I mean, yeah, all right, Checo got those wins in Saudi and Azerbaijan, but come on, Max has been faultless. Let me know, of all 20 of mine and all 20 of yours, which one is the worst take? Give it some constructive critique in the comments below. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.